Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you my first look at the new Loxia 25mm f2.4. Now, the 25mm is the fifth lens in the Loxia lineup, and it helps to bridge that gap between the wide-angle 21mm and the 35mm lens. 25mm, of course, is a little bit of an odd focal length, unless you're Zeiss. Zeiss has actually done this focal length a number of times, both in the Batis series and more recently in the Milvus series. And so this is a focal length that they are comfortable with designing, and I think that that shows in the performance of the lens as we take a closer look at it here today. So today we're going to jump in and we're going to look at the handling, we're going to look at the design, give you some of the specs, the details, what you can accomplish with this lens, along with showing you some images from it towards the end of the video. So let's jump in and stay tuned for those images towards the end. First thing to note here is that all of these Loxia lenses are designed with a certain commonality in mind. And so they all share similar dimensions in terms of the diameter of the lens. And so in this case, this is 2.44 inches or 62 millimeters in diameter. All of them share this 52 millimeter front filter thread designation. And the behavior of them is easy to use, like example for video, because they all can use the Lens Gear Mini, and so that you can easily gear them to use for video production. And so, and so in that sense, f2.4 is obviously not a common maximum aperture, but that comes with, Zeiss is using a consistent design philosophy for the whole Loxia series, and so all of them are going to share this commonality, and so they design these with that restraint in mind. And so in this case, the thing that has to give is that rather than having a larger maximum aperture at 25 millimeters, for example, there is a Batis 25 millimeter that has an f2 aperture. There is a Milvus 25 millimeter lens that has an f1.4 aperture. Both of those lenses, however, are significantly larger than this lens, and particularly in the case of the Milvus, and they have a larger diameter and filter thread, which is the key issue there. And so in this case, Zeiss knows exactly what they're going for. Also, like the other lenses in the Loxia series, there is a place right here where you can either insert a little key from Zeiss, or you can actually use a small flat-bladed screwdriver and rotate that a complete turn. And then the aperture, instead of having clicks, as you see here, it instead becomes a declicked aperture, and so that you can smoothly move through the rack through the whole aperture choices that are there. And so that is, again, part of the dual purpose of this lens design for video purposes. And so, again, as with all of the Loxia series, this is a lens that is really designed, it's a great stills lens, don't get me wrong, but it is also designed with some video-specific qualities in mind, including that commonality of build, that diameter, the ability to declick the aperture. This is a lens that is designed with the recognition that this is going to be a great way to build a small, light, but also a beautifully, perfectly damped focus ring type lens that is going to be great for video work. And so that's part of what Zeiss is designing for here. Looking again at the aperture for a moment, if you're in the clicked mode, as I am right now, it is 1/3 stop detents that are there. And so in this case, you've got 1 to f2.8, then you have 1, 2, 3 arriving at f4. I always like when I see that because it gives you the same kind of finite control you would get if you were controlling the aperture from within the camera body itself. And so a nice thing to see there. I also do want to point out, I really do like the placement of the all of the Loxias, their aperture ring, with it so close to the camera. Not that that's necessarily the easiest place to grab. It could easily be argued that at the front of the lens is the easiest place to grab, but I like it more because it stays out of the way. And so I find with some lenses, the aperture ring and the manual focus ring is too close together, and it's too easy to inadvertently turn the one when you're reaching for the other. In this case, you're always going to reach for the actual focus ring here unless you're intentionally reaching for the aperture ring. Now, one other thing I do want to point out that has been my kind of complaint against the Loxia lenses is that when you're going to unmount this lens, because everything rotates, both the whole outer portion of the barrel is You know, that's manual focus ring, and then the rest of the barrel is manual aperture ring. Byproduct is when you go to break the lens free, everything moves on you. And so you have to, I find I grip the whole thing. Even so, it's still a little bit rough sometimes to break it free. It's an acquired skill, but anyway, not my favorite thing about that. Now, looking at the actual manual focus ring, as you can see, tightly ribbed here, and it occupies basically the front close to, it's not quite 3 inches because the lens itself is under 3 inches in length. It's 2.95 inches or 75 millimeters, but I think it's safe to say that probably over 2 of those inches, close to 2.5 of them, are dominated by this portion of the barrel that includes the manual focus ring. Damping is Loxia perfect. You know, it is exceptional, just enough. It moves nice and smoothly, but there's just enough weight there that it's easy to choose a certain position. Now, in this case, the focus throw is not particularly long. As you can see, I wouldn't say that let's see if we go from top all the way to the side. I mean, you're somewhere probably around 100 degrees of focus throw. So, you know, you could argue you might want a little bit more than that. However, in the field using the lens, I haven't had any problem nailing focus with it. It seems to work quite well. The lens does have electronic contacts, and so when you begin to input focus on the manual focus ring, it will immediately automatically magnify the active focus point on the camera body. And I just find, at the same time I was reviewing other manual focus lenses on Sony camera without this aid, and it's amazing how much easier it is to use the Loxia lens to manually focus because of that. It's just a much faster, more easily intuitive process, and so kudos to them when it comes to that. It's just, you know, not everybody likes manual focus, but if you're going to use a manual focus lens, this is about as easy as it gets right here. It's very easy to use. Now, the lens can focus down to under 10 inches, 9.84 inches, or 25 centimeters, and that is from the sensor on the camera. And so you can focus down quite closely, and you have actually quite a useful magnification, 0.156 times magnification, or a 1 to 6.4 reproduction ratio. And so that's not, you know, huge. It's not going to be confused with macro, but it is useful. And so all of that works well. The lens itself has an optical design of 10 elements in 8 groups. This is a Distagon optical formula arrangement. I will also note that unlike the previous Loxia lenses, Zeiss is more definite when it comes to the weather sealing on this lens. I mean, for one thing, you definitely have a fairly meaty gasket here, but they also very specifically note that there are internal seals in the lens. And so I think we can say with confidence that this is a weather sealed lens. You know, some people have said with the other Loxia lenses, there's just a gasket, no internal seals. Well, in this case, there certainly is internal seals when it comes to that. The lens itself, of course, you know, it does come with this pedal-shaped lens hood, as with the other Loxia lenses. And one thing I do praise is that these lens hoods are designed that when they are reversed for storage, they add next to nothing in terms of extra diameter. And so they're very easy to bring along. It's got some like felt type material in here that flocking that will help to keep stray light from bouncing around. The lens itself obviously is extremely compact, as you can see, but because it is all metal materials, you know, a very premium build, and these Loxia lenses are beautifully made. But, you know, byproduct of that is it has a little bit more heft than what a comparative lens would have that was made out of, you know, more consumer grade materials. And so it weighs in at 13.86 ounces or 393 grams. And so in an absolute sense, still very light, very easy to balance on the camera, but it does have that unique Zeiss heft to it, just in a miniaturized version. This lens comes to market at a price of $1,299, which is definitely expensive. As far as the Loxia series goes, it puts it at about the middle of the pack. They run from $949 to roughly $1,500. And so this lens kind of splits the difference down the middle. So as you can see, the Loxia 25mm f2.4, it continues on in the theme of the dual purpose design of the Loxia series, and that it's designed both for stills, which it's a fantastic lens. That's a great focal length, and you can do a lot of things with it. It also it's very sharp. And Loxia series, as we're going to see as we look at the image quality episode in our next episode, Loxia series really has fantastic color rendering. I can always tell a difference when I'm using them compared to whatever else I'm shooting with at the time. They really do a fantastic job. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. But the other part of the dual nature of this is that it really is designed with video shooters in mind. And so, of course, those of you that have used the Loxia series for video production, I don't need to sell you on them. They are great options. You know, that buttery smooth manual focus ring, ability to declick the aperture, the shared commonality of lens design helps this to be a really purposeful series. And in some ways, I would say that it's the most focused of the Loxia series, or not just the Loxia series, but of any of Zeiss's lenses. You know, although it does straddle that kind of bridge between stills and video end of things. Of course, Zeiss does have dedicated cine lenses, but this recognizes that a lot of cine work today is done by ordinary people on things like the Sony a7R Mark III that I'm doing my review on. And so anyway, stay tuned for that image quality episode. We'll break things down in much more detail when it comes to that, and I'll show you everything from astro to landscapes to sharpness to chromatic aberration, distortion, all of that good stuff. And we'll jump in and we'll take a look at that. In the meantime, if you look in the description down below, I do have linkage to my image gallery, and I did take this lens on a recent trip to Arizona, and so I've got both wintry images from here, and then I've also got some great desert images, you know, along with a variety of other things from my trip there. And so I think you'll enjoy the images in the gallery if you'll take a look at those. And of course, you can also follow me on social media, including now Instagram. If you'll take a look in the description, there's links to all of those social media accounts. You can become a patron or sign up for my newsletter. And of course, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.